Okay. For for weeks, I have been struggling to concoct a concise enough, independent thought, my own assessment on a lot of stuff that's been going on. And every time I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and do this, more stuff gets added. I'm not complaining per se, as such, right? What I am saying is that if I'm having a hard time keeping track of it, a lot of other people definitely are having a hard time keeping track of it or are just letting go of it because they can't. And that's fine, it's whatever. I typically try and come up with some kind of a broken down or digestible version, and this one is just, if it was sex, she'd be tapping out. It's too much. What I will say is this: it is not so much the individual points, all the do, but this and this and this and this and this, right? What it is that Twitter was the alpha dog of the pack of big tech. Everything that was done, every change that was made, everything that you're not allowed to say, etc. Twitter led the way. That is why it matters. That is why it matters. Twitter led the way. So it's not, well, no, you can prove it, it's doing there, you can't prove it. Anybody who says that, you have my personal permission to slap them as hard as you can. Just, bah! Every platform followed suit. Who Twitter decided to ban is who the other platforms agreed to ban as well. Who Twitter decided to shadow ban or blacklist is who other platforms decided to shadow ban or blacklist as well. Well, but your shadow ban doesn't exist. You even said it in front of Congress. And you... It's called reducing visibility, and that is a function that they did and do. How does this affect us? Well, it affects people's ability to get to the bottom of something. For example, an enormous, gargantuan bombshell of drops of entirely too much to keep track of information regarding some really heinous stuff. Key highlight points. Easiest way to do it. This is all proven. You can go look it up. It's not my job to provide proof. I'm simply having collected as much as I can. Oh, do you know it's not? Do you think I'm stupid? I'm not. Guarantee. With maybe a handful, literally like less than 5 exceptions. Anyone viewing this video is viewing this for the purpose of understanding something they themselves cannot understand yet. I'm trying not to get abusive. I have a lot of what I guess you could call complex post-traumatic stress disorder when it comes to the way that I have been treated. And I try not to get triggered while talking about this stuff. But what is coming out next is going to be relating to COVID misinformation, suppression of real, factual, scientific data while calling people anti-science. That business does not get a slap, it gets a bullet. So I'm trying to remain calm. I'm trying not to get triggered, and I'm trying to continue to actually be able to put the whole thing out. So I apologize in advance if this video becomes like that. If it does it too many times, I'll just delete it anyway. It has been proven that all of the shadow banning was definitely a thing. Blacklists and visibility reductions and never popping up in search results. So if you want to look for something, you can't, right? Now, harken back to the videos that I did about informed consent. Everything that I said in those videos applies here. A person's ability to have informed consent is impacted or hindered by visibility reductions and algorithmic search omissions If a person's desire is to perform their due diligence and find out what is true as to the best of their ability to find out, the best any of us individually can do, that is impeded, and thus the right of informed consent violated when they do that. And Twitter, again, was just the leader of the pack. What they did, the others followed and also did. So knowing this, you can apply all of these same kind of things to all of the other platforms. There may be slight differences in whose weird fetish and whose specific brand of insane commie Marxist bullshit, whatever. The shadow banning is real. The search algorithm interference with the informed consent is real. They then went on to reveal, it has been proven. This is not argumentation. This is not something that is up for debate. It has been proven. The government passed a law that allowed the government, by law, not necessarily constitutionally, to contact these platforms and say, if you want to keep your Section 230 protections, the following things are now deemed obscene and they must be hidden. It's the government telling a private company to censor its users. Specifically, flatly, not even circumventing the First Amendment, just setting it on fire. The law in question was not written by Trump, but it was signed by Trump. The guy did not read it. Somebody said, hey, this is a good thing. And he goes, I like good thing. Do. Stupid, just like the rest of them. And this was his downfall. This is what enabled the internet to basically control all narratives from there on forward, because the media, the government, and the platforms that we refer to as the internet, but really it's just a handful of platforms and search algorithms with terms of service rules that everybody wants to follow so they can stay connected with all the other people's bullshit and shit posting. The addiction, right? So the government did that. And then they banned Trump. That was part of the Twitter files, talking about the fact that there was no TOS violation. Everybody in their discussions was like, yeah, we can't really find anything. And there were people that were just freaking out, getting upset, melting completely down over the fact that he wouldn't break the right rules. The guy's such an evil piece of shit. Why won't he do something evil? Well, maybe it's because he's not evil. I don't know. I mean, the banality of evil, the Jar Jar Binksiness of signing a law that you know, pretty much seals your own warrant kind of thing. But then they got into the levels of depravity. In the meantime, as these drops are happening, there are changes being made on that platform. They start enabling people to return who were falsely suspended or banned. They start re-examining the process by which any of this censorship occurs. Ultimately led to the entire censorship, what they call the Trust and Safety Board, being disbanded and fired. Come to find out, they're a bunch of chomos. What does that word mean? Those are, how do we put this? The CH stands for child, and the OMO stands for homo. Chomo. That's what they're into. Pedophiles, right? The guy, Yoel Roth, that was the head of their Trust and Safety Board, the lead censor, right? His PhD thesis was on why underage kids should be allowed to use Grindr for gay hookups. Since this was published a couple days ago by Elon Musk, oh yeah, this was buried, I found it, check it out. There's his dissertation on underage gay hookups. And he claims to have had to flee his home or whatever now. They went after the accounts. See, here's one of the things they found out in the Twitter files. All of the moderators, all of the upper echelon content moderation accounts, the people who work to keep Twitter safe, can read your private direct messages. They are open and visible to all mods. The mods were well aware of who was passing illicit photography, of pornography, of the chomo variety, and such. Think about this. They were passing stuff in messages on DMs on Twitter. The mods knew about it and did nothing. They claimed that it was too big of a thing and we don't know. Elon Musk got it took care of within a couple of weeks. Here's the funny part. Most of the accounts that were deleted for having these in their DMs back and forth were also the primary organization accounts for actual real world, mostly peaceful, fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Okay? The heads of the anti-fun police were all passing CP. If you align yourself with that organization, you need to consider who you are associating with, because guilt by association is totally a thing these days. So we've got the anti-fun police who are sharing completely illicit, illegal abuse porn. And then you've got things like the buy large mansions. Do we see there's a pattern going on here? There is a bunch of crooked, messed up people claiming to have social virtue so that you'll give them money, and they're doing really bad things in the background. In the case of the thing with kids, if you ruin generations of kids, you have a bunch of messed up adults who then have generations of messed up kids who then go on to ruin other people. The cycle is perpetuated. You have to end the cycle. You have to break the cycle. You do not continue the cycle. So it took about 2 or 3 weeks, and all these people were just gone. Now, there's still sock accounts and other things. They went after the bots. That's the real reason, I think, why they brought Donald Trump back onto Twitter, because he's got to deal with Truth Social. He's not coming back to Twitter. Anybody who is paying the slightest bit of attention to actual things going on and not just listening to MSNBC or CNN or whatever, trash news, fake news everywhere, nobody's telling the truth. People who are actually looking into stuff were aware of the fact that he founded this company, paid for it himself, said, yeah, I'm not going back there. I've got this now. And then they did the thing where they open it up and people are having meltdowns. It's like, you morons. He said he wasn't coming back. But guess what? The morons and the bots went and attacked Trump's Twitter account. And they were able to find the bots and get rid of them. The estimation is something like almost half of Twitter was bots. I'm not talking about blaming people for different opinions by calling them bots. I'm talking about actual fake accounts, sock accounts, either with some kind of an algorithmic or script-based chatbot thing going on to antagonize, intimidate, or gaslight people. To provide the illusion that more people think a certain fucked up wrong way than actually do. So, in getting to see how much of stuff they were doing, people started saying, okay, we want to know about the COVID stuff though too. And how much was really held back? How badly was it? Not just with things like Hunter Biden's laptop, not just things with the Maricopa County audit, which Katie Hobbs, who is currently in an emergency lawsuit to question whether or not she actually won an election, that she certified herself as Secretary of State while there are concerns over the handling of it. And it was really funny. I was watching that hearing yesterday, and one of the two attorneys for Carrie Lake, the plaintiff in the case, running for governor as well, was that they informed the judge. They said, okay, so these documents we have, they were like, we want to place these under, the defense said, Maricopa County defense lawyer said, we want to place these under seal to protect the personal information. And the attorneys for the plaintiff said, actually, all personal information has been redacted on these, so there's no need to do that. The judge says, well, I'm going to err on the side of caution, though. And the attorney for the plaintiff says, that's fine, Your Honor, but just so you know, regardless of the outcome of this case, these are going up afterward. And the judge kind of balked for a second. Oh. Yeah, bro. What the attorneys were saying in that one was just something to the effect that the public has a right to know and to see how these people are conducting elections in Maricopa County. And it was pretty hilarious. It was good. Fire's coming. But so here's the thing, right? That government portal had not been legalized yet, but it was already in use prior to Trump signing that law. And during the Maricopa County audit in 2020 to 2021, there was a lot of suppression of that topic, all of that. You're not allowed to question the following elections. Only certain ones. Isn't that dumb? Kind of makes you think that the list of only certain ones might be a significant list in other ways. If you think they're lying to you, they are. So then there's the COVID thing, right? And there's going to be all kinds of stuff about what science at what point, what stories were squashed. We already know that I was right. Many others were right too. I'm not making exclusive claim to the truth, right? But I was very fucking right. And now we're going to find out how fucking right. But there's more. There is more. More? Much more. It's a guy named Ryan Cole. Just watched him on Dr. Drew the other day. And there have been tissue samples taken of fibrous clots, some of which are a good foot long or more, the components of which are a couple of amino acids and other proteins that have similar receptor points to the, I think they were calling it the ACE2 receptor, which is what the spike protein connects to. And so there's one of those things where we have a virus with this shaped plug. We have an immune system with this shaped opening, right? And we need to manufacture a little bit of this plug so that the opening knows to go looking for the plug, right? That's in an ultra simplified, that's your immune system, right? Okay, but here's the thing. There's like 2 or 3 other places that this might stick into. And when you create a little thing that is just a line of code or whatever, as it were, that says, okay, make the spike protein, and they don't really know what they're doing with it, it's very experimental. What ends up happening is people's bodies, in some cases, have been found to be completely flooded with spike protein. Talking like legitimate placenta is saturated with spike protein. That cannot develop. Sex organs, hormone glands, tissue of all sorts. They're finding myelin and what they say the other one was amyls. That's the amylin is the plaque from the Alzheimer's is what they were saying. Is there is that a cousin, a related plaque to that, and a type of myelin which is very similar to your brain case lining, has been found in the fiber of these clots, along with the constituents of blood and real blood clots. But they're not clots like that. They are enormous rubber band textured fibrous protein chunks that are just growing inside of some people. Now, at this time, from an honest scientific standpoint, they have not been able to discern whether these are exclusively from people who had a shot, had multiple shots, had a virus, and then the shot, or only had the virus, or never had the virus. They don't know yet. Then on top of that, there is, you remember in the 80s, 70s and 80s, there was a thing called SIDS. They called it crib death, and then they called it sudden infant death syndrome. And there were some people that had theories on what caused that. And even back then, everyone just said, well, I guess nobody knows. Well, it turns out I think they did. But back then, they didn't have VAERS. So now we have sudden adult death syndrome. I guess you call it sports field death because that seems to be where a lot of them are happening. No one is doing a real self-honest analysis into what's causing these or if they're related. Nobody wants to. Everybody's terrified of touching it. Nobody wants to lose their job or whatever. Their funding, their privilege of participating in the society. But all these things are out there and they are happening. A number of other concerning things that seem to be cropping up that are alarmingly significant that are also at this time being squashed unless Twitter decides to allow these things to be spoken of openly, that a real dialogue may be had to figure out what exactly happened. But it looks like on top of the spontaneous myo and pericarditis issues, these weird fibrous clots, possible prion folding. That's the whole thing. mRNA, if it gets into your brain, it could cause your brain to develop incorrectly, and you're gonna have people having seizures and all these other weird dementia-like symptoms and other serious brain cell generation problems. But on top of that, it turns out that at least one of the places that little thing can also possibly plug into is something that is typically tasked with accepting a hormone to help it inhibit tumor growth. And without the hormone, because this thing's plugged into it instead, allows a ton of tumor growth. So there's a number of youths having particular types of tumors too. This is coming around. So then on top of that, here's the fucked up part. Now, at the start, at the very beginning of the pandemic, the initial science, the patients that they had, they took fluid and tissue samples from all over the body, and it turned out that the highest concentration of virions, the highest viral load, was contained not only at mucous membranes, but in seminal fluid, which is pre-cum for men, or vaginal lubrication for women, is basically the same thing. Highest concentration is that and feces. So then when they had their first major community spread issues, they typically were in college towns that had just gone back to class, and the kids get back and they party and they hang out and they fuck. They go down, right? And anybody who did this without protection, and somebody else might have had a viral load contained within, toss the salad, lick the dressing, right? So people were getting it that way. 85% of the spread was from that. Not from the face, the mouth. I've been over this too, the whole thing with the eyes, ears, nose, not covering it. It's pointless. Your safest way was to not have unprotected sex with people that you're not sure about. Then we ended up having this monkeypox business for a half second. Now what we're looking at is they're finding that breast milk, seminal fluid, feces, bodily secretions of all sorts of people who are fully boosted repeatedly are chock full of spike protein and mRNA. And it is transmissible. Babies getting it from their mothers, sex partners catching it from each other. It's spreading. Not the virus. Not the virus. I'm not talking about the virus. You're going to have to put the other last half of that sentence together in your own mind. Say it out loud. What is spreading? So your best bet at this point, if you want to stay safe, is that if you're already a pureblood, you're going to have to also be celibate. All this crap's going on. And on top of that, maybe if I'm lucky, they might want to pay me for my blood, because it sounds like they're going to need it. Blood that hasn't been tainted. But then also, if there's reproductive problems, they're going to want untainted semen. And I don't want to put that into the world like that. I don't want any potential reincarnation on my part. I do not want any slightest piece of the same kind of consciousness that I possess in the world. Because that consciousness is miserable all the time. And smart enough to know, and articulate enough to tell people, who then don't listen until it is far too late. So like I said, somebody comes up and gives you crap about the Twitter thing, and, well, that's just a different, hit them, slap them, smack them. Physical violence seems to be the only thing these people understand. And when it comes to the COVID misinformation, we're going to come to a point where people who want to try and throw a fit, talk some shit, be like, yeah, but I showed you that study. You know that thing was withdrawn though, right? Literally, nothing that they provided stood up to the test of time or to scrutiny. It was false. Bad science. Lies. Bullet.